Howdy of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Zombieland. So, I would say first off that this movie is probably the most fun zombie movie you're going to watch, but I would never recommend to anyone to watch the Zombieland Double Tap sequel. That movie is awful, and it basically just ruins this movie for you. It kind of just makes me go and just say, okay, Zombieland, the first one, is the only one I'm ever going to watch because I made the mistake of watching the other one and I was like, God, this movie is awful. They really just phoned it in the sequel. And plus, also, they tried to separate the group to make it seem like they really killed time in that movie. But anyways, so Zombieland. This movie kind of feels like bits and pieces like Last Man on Earth, like how they kind of go through parts of the town and they just kind of have fun and kill zombies while they're at it. Like Last Man on Earth isn't a zombie show. It's just like everybody had died from some illness or whatever, and so there's just very few people left that are just scavenging for whatever stuff. It's a survival show. It's not a zombie show. So, but check that out. You'll have really a lot of laughs while watching that show. When I was to watch this again, I was just immediately thinking this feels like Last Man on Earth a lot. So, with that said, I would say that this is so much of a fun zombie movie, but if anything, for fun, would that mean that this movie is great? Or if this movie is to be better than a lot of other zombie movies that I've probably reviewed, like Train to Busan, or quite possibly A Night of the Living Dead, or any number of other things that I've reviewed zombie-wise. I would say that this is a really fun movie, and it kind of has a lot of fun with what it does. It kind of feels like a very unique film. But I would also just kind of say that I don't know if I quite really enjoy a road trip movie. I feel like this does a lot of unique stuff. I think that this movie is overall fun. I think what the success of this movie was to happen, I think went into having a number of different kinds of movies like this. I think a lot of people did try to copy and paste the Zombieland formula of things afterwards. I also feel that there is going to be another fan base that is also going to enjoy this film. And so a lot of people might just be like, well, hey, but wait to that one part of this movie, and I should have immediately been won over by that, and so everyone else should, kind of for me, yeah, I like this movie, I enjoy it. I'm not saying that this is that this isn't the most fun you're ever gonna have in a zombie film, bar none. But I can't equal fun into saying that I would say this is a great zombie film, and I think we'll just leave it at that. I would just say that it's a getting close to great, almost great kind of zombie film. Really what they do in the intro sequence with the credits is just kind of fun. Seeing a lot of stuff getting ruined and destroyed and whatever during this whole entire movie was really fun to watch. A lot of the unique things that they did in this movie I thought was just this will stick out forever. And I think reasonably, you just kind of wish that there was a little bit more zombie stuff, even more than what was actually going on in this movie. Yeah, it's an hour and 30, almost 30 minutes, but I just kind of wish there was more zombie stuff. I wish there could have been like more of a time where it seems that these people were in a consistent panic, a consistent worry everywhere they were to go. I wish there was a consistent threat everywhere they were to go, but there wasn't that. And so that's where I was just kind of like, okay, this movie is kind of like, I'm looking back on it now, like this movie kind of feels slow, but for like an hour and a half. But still, this is the most fun you're gonna have. Like these characters are to give you like really good jokes. There's so many lines to have come from this movie that you're gonna remember from forever. There's numerous things that you're probably gonna like just laugh at during this film, and so really I would say like yeah, check out this movie if you haven't, if it's on your Netflix queue or whatever, or if it's on a queue wherever the heck that you will watch this movie in the distant future. Check it out if you've never seen it, because it is a good enough watch if you've never seen it in your life. And if you have seen it, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So let's go out of our way to say that it is about that coveted time yet again to go into spoilers about this movie. Yeah, so I would say great zombie movie. Like I wouldn't go out of my way to say like this is like the best. I would just say it's the most fun you're gonna ever have. A lot more jokes to be had in this compared to any of the other ones. Like I just feel like there's some kind of themes in other zombie movies that I probably just enjoy more. Or I just like the consistent threat of a zombie much more than a lot of jokes. But like if you can combine the two to be a consistent threat but also a joke, like I love zombie like parody stuff because I think those are great. But anyways, it's that coveted time yet again to go into this thing called spoiler territory. So spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this movie. So beginning of this movie, we are to go to the U.S. Capitol, and a lot of people immediately just like, yeah, there's just a lot of like they really have to showcase that this is like an American zombie film, which I think that's kind of where I'm just kind of like, yeah, I think that's why I'm just kind of like they should have made this like a world thing where like I get they're trying to tell you how big of a scope that this zombie thing is, and I think that is a very cool approach that they did that with like they started out with this where all of a sudden a guy with a camera is kind of like panning back and all of a sudden a secret service is to go ahead and jump onto this cameraman and consume him. I thought that that was a really cool and interesting like unique way of approaching this. And so also just kind of the rules that start coming down of like the real basic rules to like survive in a zombie apocalypse was also just kind of a refreshing thing to do. But anyways, so rule one, cardio. We have a man who is who is of a size, whatever, running through a football field, and yeah, I'm sure I would have a huge difficult time running through a freaking football field, no matter who you are. Like, so man is running down a football field, and all of a sudden there's a zombie chasing after him. The zombie is to grab onto this man and give him a good old little nibble, just like a little. Rule one, cardio. So, rule two is to double tap. We have a woman who is to like have this very chaotic part of town. All of a sudden there is to be, I believe, a police officer would turn into a zombie that is all of a sudden just gonna go and just see a woman. And so this woman is to go and shoot this man, and she all of a sudden decides, oh, I'm just gonna just get a little touch of his back just to see if he's still alive. And so yeah, what a mistake that this woman makes, because that leads this zombie to come back alive, grab this woman's ankle and start biting away, just and that leads also a bunch of other zombies to just all just decide to swarm this woman and start heavily consuming her, and she just becomes a Happy Meal because she's stupid and because she thought, oh yeah, let me just hit this zombie to see if it's still alive. No, just shoot it to make sure. Shoot it in the head, because that's always the big mistake that every single zombie movie has ever done. They always like shoot them in the foot or they shoot them in the stomach because they're stupid. Because we've had a billion freaking zombie movies that will tell you go for the head, but instead they go for anywhere else but that because they don't know any better. Pushing on. So, uh, anyways, the next rung of things. There is to be a rule 3: beware of bathrooms. We have a guy that was to be a worker at a gas and gulp who went and took a crap, and so all of a sudden we have a zombie who is making his way out of or way into the bathroom stall with guy who is taking a dump because like this zombie is like banging on this guy's door and he's like, hey, give me a break, I'm taking a deuce. Zombie comes in and goes and kills this man in the bathroom. Rule 3: beware of bathrooms. So, the next thing is that we should probably cut all emotional ties to everybody, and that even if like it's like your best friend, your wife, your whatever, reasonably if they're a zombie, it's like, hey, shoot first and then just apologize later. Oh, because what ends up happening is there's this woman with a minivan who is to be surrounded by all these kids who are now zombies, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And so she starts driving off, and so that leads her to eventually just crazily driving through this town, accidentally smacking into some truck, and she forgot to fasten her seatbelt. And so this woman is to go flying out of her minivan and smack into the street. And rule 4: fasten your seatbelt. So right after these like kind of basic rules, all of a sudden we are to like see like the zombie montage of things. We see a lot of family like big family events that all get ruined because someone is to eventually become a zombie. We see a bride who becomes a zombie at her wedding. We see a stripper becoming a zombie at a strip club. We see a father and son event where like the father and son are like trying to get away from all the other zombie fathers and sons because they're like tied together at the leg. And like, so yeah, like we just see that moment, which I thought was interesting. So pushing on. So we are now in Garland, Texas, and we are to have a guy named Columbus, Ohio, because he doesn't actually have a name, who is going to a gas and gulp, and he is to go to the bathroom. So, so Columbus, who is Jesse Eisenberg, is to go to try to make it to the bathroom, and all of a sudden it seems that there is a zombie in the door of this bathroom. And when Jesse is to make it back to his car that is by these gas pumps, all of a sudden there is another zombie that arrives there. Or no, wait, like his car is just parked in the parking lot. There's another car that is to have been by the gas pumps that there's a zombie there. So we have Jesse Eisenberg's character who is now just running in circles around this parking lot, and he's running so fast that he's just outpacing these zombies. He ends up dropping his keys like by his car, and so he's like, oh crap, and so he has to like run even further so that way these zombies will eventually just like not get as far as where he is. So Columbus goes and grabs for his keys and then realizes that his door is still unlocked. So he's like, ah, crap. So, also Jesse was to mention before he was to try to get to the bathroom that supposedly the patient zero of this world evidently had a contaminated burger, I'd assume, that was at some gas and gulp. Maybe the whole reason of this all popping off is because of gas and gulps, and maybe, maybe Columbus should just stay away from that. So, anyways, that leads us to have Jesse going into his car, and he is to just drive off. And all of a sudden, he is to have forgotten one of his rules, to check the back seat. Because all of a sudden, there is to be a zombie in his back seat. And so Columbus just decides to go and put the brakes on his car, have this zombie come flying out of his windshield to eventually still have Columbus have to try to defend himself against this zombie. And then Columbus just defecates himself anyways, because he's just like, well, I found a place to go number 2, so isn't that great? This transitions us to now having Jesse start to be kind of roaming through the streets without a car or without anything. And so rule 7 is to be travel light. Jesse is going on in these streets kind of looking around, kind of saying like, oh, what would be a nice little car for me to take? And so Jesse is to all of a sudden see like a car kind of passing by. It's a Cadillac, and it has the number 3 off to the side. Jesse's character bizarrely decides, or Columbus's character, I should say Columbus. Columbus decides that he's like, well, heck, like I should probably go and I should probably hide behind a motorcycle because, yeah, like that's the only way that like he can easily hide is behind a motorcycle. So Tallahassee is to eventually go and spot Columbus. Tallahassee gets out of his car and they at first have this like gun standoff, and then all of a sudden like Columbus is to like hitchhike, and Tallahassee's just like come on, yeah, go ahead. So anyways, once Jesse is to go into the car, immediately he's to look in the back seat because Rule 31 is check the back seat. So Tallahassee gives Columbus alcohol, where Columbus goes and just like, no, not today, sir, not today, because probably Columbus is also thinking that Tallahassee could frickin' poison him, so who knows? But also, it's like, you might as well just not drink anyways, because zombie apocalypse and you're gonna be drunk? That seems kind of dumb. So Columbus is just gabbing away, and so Tallahassee is just like, you know what, I can already tell that we're, like, I don't think that, like, you and me are gonna, like, work out all that well. Like, I give us till, like, Tex Arcana, and then we're probably gonna, like, go our separate ways. And because, really, Columbus is just thinking that they're both going the same direction, and so, if anything, they should be going, like, together for a while to be on the road. And just, like, Tallahassee's like, I don't think so. So, but we end up finding out that, like, we switch to this one bizarre scene where Tallahassee's to have these 2 chainsaws and be this, like, in this bizarre business, and business is good, and he has these two chainsaws, and like he used to be like a guy that is trying to consistently attempt to be like zombie killer of the week, I guess. So anyways, this transitions us on to finding out the one weakness that Tallahassee has, and that is to be a hostess truck. And so, like, I love this fact that we end up having frickin' Columbus, who's just like doing these like stretches, and he's just like, and Tallahassee's like, "What are you doing?" And Columbus is like, "Well, like, limber up, like Rule 18, limber up," and Tallahassee's just like, "Limber up? Like, I'm sorry, you don't see a lion like limber up before he's gonna hunt a gazelle, do you?" And so Jesse's like, "Well, like whatever. Like you're gonna pull something, or like something's gonna happen when we go down this downcline of getting to this hostess truck." So because anything, the one weakness of Tallahassee is that he desperately is in wanting of a Twinkie. And so when they are to finally go down to this hostess truck, all they find is it's all just snowballs. And so Tallahassee's just like, "Snowballs!" And so, bizarrely, we have Columbus, who loves snowballs, and Tallahassee's just like if one thing that I hate is just like coconut, like just the consistency of it. I just know. So, anyways, so Jesse is to mention that he needs to desperately take the Browns to the Super Bowl, and so that leads, of course, Tallahassee taking, of course, Columbus to the bathroom, where he's like, "Again so soon?" Like, so anything weirdly, once Columbus does go to the bathroom, he has this weird thing about like fantasizing about if there's nothing worse than being afraid of a zombie, it's actually being more afraid of a clown. All of a sudden, we have like a clown that is going to come out of the bathroom stall and try to attack Columbus. I'm like, what the heck is this? The first time I ever saw this movie, I'm like, what the heck is this? Like the clown coming into the bathroom stall? Like, when does that ever happen? Because I thought that was freaking hilarious when it was like the first thing I ever saw. I'm like, yeah, I guess a lot of people just hate clowns. Hence why we had like a real string of people that were bizarrely wearing like clown costumes for whatever reason. So, so now we are to go into flashback mode, which is to kind of have Columbus, like before this whole thing started to pop off, this whole situation of Columbus, before him going to this bathroom at this gas and gulp. So Columbus is to be on his computer playing World of Warcraft. He is to be drinking like a Mountain Dew Code Red. And I was like, when I first like saw this movie, I was like, wait a minute. Like, they still have Mountain Dew Code Red? Like, man, like, because I remember I used to drink that kind of stuff all the time, especially when I would go to, like, Taco Bell. I would go and, like, yeah, can I have some Mountain Dew Code Red? And I had, like, Mountain Dew Code Red a lot. And so, like, once I saw this movie again, because it was a long stretch of me ever drinking Mountain Dew Code Red, I was like, oh my god, do they still do like Code Red? So I went out and tried to search for it, and I found out like Mountain Dew Code Red doesn't taste as good as it used to be, and then I just stopped drinking it. But yeah, like, man, like in its heyday, like Mountain Dew Code Red was like the stuff. Let's just say. So, Columbus is drinking his Mountain Dew Code Red, and so all of a sudden, like Columbus is in room like apartment room 408, and so all of a sudden he has to hear this banging uh, on his door desperately from a girl who is in panic from a room close to his called 406. And so, uh, really, just Columbus is just so happy that 406 had come a knocking on his door because he's like, that girl is insanely hot. Uh, so 406 is to come into Columbus's apartment, and like we never find out what this girl's name is. She's just 406 to Columbus this whole time. So 406 is to mention that she was supposedly attacked by a homeless man. Like she was just kind of surprised, like she was taken off guard by this homeless man, and then all of a sudden, like he tried to bite her. So really like Jesse Eisenberg's character Columbus is to start going into all these like weird phobias and so like 406 is just like, wow, that's just kind of weird. All right, so really 406 is to just consistently tell like Columbus is like, well, I'm gonna go and sleep then, and so she like sleeps like right on him basically. So because she mentions that, I think she mentions that she ended up getting bitten, and so I would just be like, if anybody is to bite anybody, I like go in a separate room. I'll put you in the if you do not become a zombie by morning. Then anyways, so Columbus is to wake up, I guess, in the middle of the night to see that 406 had become a zombie. And so, and like she's in his face. And like, so all of a sudden now, like Columbus is just kind of like running through his place, like kind of just eventually running into his bathroom, and he's trying to slam the door on 406, but and like her freaking ankle is to be like broken, like you can see the bone pop out, and so like Columbus is like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, because he's trying to reason with her. He's like, 406, it's like, please, like don't eat me kind of thing. He's like desperately like scrambling throughout his house, but he's trying to like ration with her, and she's just like, Argh. So all of a sudden, like we have like Columbus, who is now having to desperately like grab his like shower curtain and toss it over 406's head, and so 406 like rips the shower curtain with her tongue, and she's like, ah. So Columbus is like throwing tissue paper at her head. He's like going and like having like Febreze or whatever, like spraying in her like face. And so like this eventually like Columbus does eventually separate himself from her and grabs his toilet like lid, like the toilet cover part, like the very top of the toilet where the flushing part is. He grabs the little like the toilet cover part, like top thing. I don't know what it's called. And so he takes this toilet piece, let's just say, and smacks her over the head with it, and then closes the door. And so now Columbus is like out into the other room, like thinking that now he's safe, thinking that he probably smacked her hard enough. But instead, 406 opens this door, and then she like gets up, freaking mangled leg and all, which I'm like, how exactly did they do the mangled leg part? Did they have to like do that with like prosthetics or whatever? Like they like had some like they just shot from a certain angle, so like it made it look like this person was doing that, but not really. And because how could you walk like that? Like if you're an actual actress. So now 406 is making her way to Jesse, and so now Jesse goes and smacks her again with the toilet thing. And so that is to go into double tap territory. So that leads us to like go back into current time. Flashback is now over. So that leads to both Jesse and Columbus and Tallahassee going and moving some cars that are like kind of like in the they're bothersome, these cars, and so both Columbus and Tallahassee are just kind of moving cars out of the way. Like there's some horrific looking, I guess, car accidents that had happened, I guess. So but that leads them to just go back in the car and drive off. And so immediately the big question that Tallahassee has for Columbus is, when was the last time you did it? When was the last time you went like toe to toe or like hands to Jesus or whatever? Like, so all of a sudden Columbus is just kind of looking on the road, just kind of checking to just like, well, I went with a girl and we did it in a FedEx truck, and like you can obviously see there's some FedEx boxes off to the side of the road, and Tallahassee's like, really? So like some time ago, and Tallahassee's like, hey, what's her name? And or what was her name? And so Columbus had said Beverly Hills, and so Tallahassee's like, you dog. What a goofy thing. So that leads us to have them be on this road, and eventually they are to stop to see that there is a zombie eating someone. And so bizarrely we have like Jesse mentioning about like, man, doesn't this like remind you of like simpler times when eventually we were to go and like catch like fireflies or whatever? And Tallahassee's like, no, like that just makes me hungry. And so Jesse is just like, okay, I'm a little worried about you right now. So that leads them to just go to this spot called Blaine's Grocery. I think I'm going to pause here for a second to get reset. All right. So, and this is probably the most fun part of the movie, because we are to have, of course, Tallahassee going into the back of his vehicle with all these like weird, bizarre like weapons. Like we're to see like a pickaxe and like a baseball bat's pretty normal, pretty straightforward. But like there's all these like gardening tools or whatever. And I'm like, what the heck is all this stuff for? Like there's these like big like yard clippers or whatever. Like freaking weird. So so all of a sudden like Tallahassee to grab like a banjo. I'm like, what is the banjo going to be for? But eventually he uses it. So we go into this grocery store, and all of a sudden we are to have Tallahassee just going like, hey man, like let's check it out to just see if there's any zombies in here. And so we just have like Tallahassee banjoing it away. Ding 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 ding. And so all of a sudden we get some big hoss of zombies that are to become strolling down these grocery aisles, which is to lead to have, of course, Tallahassee going and like either like smacking these things with a banjo because they have a pretty mouth, or going and smacking them with several bat swings. Or eventually, once we get to a zombie down the further part of an... I'm going to pause here. All right. So, now we transition to eventually having Emma Stone's character, which is Wichita, coming from the back room of this store. And she is basically asking, could you guys help? And so both Tallahassee and Columbus are just like, okay, like, but Columbus is to say, well, wait a minute, and evidently another rule is to be 22, when in doubt, find your way out. So, uh, we go into this back room, and so Tallahassee is to tell Columbus that this is to be Wichita in Ohio, or Wichita and Little Rock, I mean. Blah, blah, blah. Wichita and Little Rock. So, evidently Emma Stone's character is Wichita, and Little Rock is to be the younger girl. I don't remember what her actress's name is. But I know she was in Final Girl, so check that out. Not Final Girls, Final Girl. She was in that movie. Hence, maybe why in Zombieland 2 she had blonde hair, I guess. Anyways, so uh, really, Tallahassee is to tell Columbus that evidently Little Rock is to be infected, and eventually she's going to turn soon. And so they're kind of debating like when to shoot her because she might turn soon. And so we have it to where like people are kind of taking turns of like I don't know who's gonna shoot it. It seems like I don't know who's gonna shoot it. Like who's gonna shoot Little Rock, and so Tallahassee goes and is going to do it at first, but then Wichita says no, I'll do it, and so Wichita goes and takes the gun, and so Wichita and like Little Rock are having this little moment, and so Tallahassee's like, well, hey, do you need any help? And so Wichita's like, well, yeah, like, I think I might need some help going and, like, taking your car keys and everything that you have. Maybe if you have some gum, that'd be great, too. And they're like, what? Swerve? What kind of garbage is this? Like, what kind of con is this? What kind of prank is this? So, and so they steal everything of both Columbus and Tallahassee. They steal their guns and everything, their car, and they drive off. And so uh, now is to just say it's like, okay, well, so where are we off to next? Which is like both Wichita and Little Rock are driving off. And so Wichita is asking, of course, Little Rock, hey, where are we going to next? And of course, Little Rock is to mention Pacific Playland, which is supposedly a place that is to be zombie free, but I don't believe that at all. So, now we just have just both Columbus and Tallahassee that are just kind of like going throughout the town, bizarrely like swapping stories. We have Columbus that is to mention about like some cool thing that happened to him, and Tallahassee's to mention that all of a sudden there was to be like a steamroller that was to come up and squeeze a zombie like a tube of toothpaste. And so uh and so Columbus is to mention it's like, well, are you just a guy that just wants to tell like a one-upsman kind of story? And Tallahassee's like, no, like I knew a guy that did that once and I hated him. So Columbus is to mention like, hey man, like there's a great little minivan there. And so all of a sudden, like Tallahassee's just like, oh yeah, this minivan, it is really great. And so all of a sudden he just starts beating the crap out of it with like all fiber in his body, like going and taking like a bat to it and all kinds of things, just trying to like destroy it as much as he can. And so all of a sudden, like Tallahassee's to jump from like I think the top of this minivan to down to the ground, and so all of a sudden he's like, "Oh, like I think I pulled something," and all of a sudden there's a rule that comes up as limbering up. So we transition to these guys continuing to go on like through the streets of wherever the heck this is, Calcutta. Sure, that's always my go-to town location, a place that I would assume never exists, but it does, probably somewhere. But I always put that joke in there everywhere I go. So, both both Tallahassee and Ohio are to eventually see a Hummer that is to have two hands on the steering wheel. And of course, we have Tallahassee who takes one of the hands and gives the finger to Columbus and is like, "Hey, this is great, a Hummer." So Columbus is to go and, of course, check the back seat because that's what he would always do anyways. And so both Columbus and Tallahassee are to find out that there's a slew of guns there, a slew of, like, a lot of guns. And so all of a sudden we have Tallahassee just firing off these guns into the air because, like, Columbus knows that Tallahassee is just going to have some fun and enjoy the little things. Excuse me. So these two are to eventually get on the road, and so Tallahassee is to talk about Buck, who we are to see scenes where we are to naturally assume that Buck is really just Tallahassee's dog. That's the first assumption that we are to make. But if anything, like, Tallahassee's to give us that little thing of enjoy the little things, because he's to kind of rattle off all the things that he wants, like hopefully a Twinkie and like all these kinds of things. And so Columbus goes and decides to put that as Rule 32, enjoy the little things. So Tallahassee and Columbus go on to I don't know what it is with me trying to like touch my ear. I don't know what it is with that review. Like I don't, as if I'm gonna pull it off or something. So I have to make jokes about things. So Columbus and Tallahassee make their way through this big stretch of road. It seems like there is some kind of big things of like hay. Like there's like big things of hay that are bizarrely on this road, weirdly enough. And so all of a sudden they are to see the Cadillac, and so Tallahassee's like, yeah, I'm gonna get my caddy back because that's all he's ever wanted to do. So on the car, it is to like have like words on it that are to say help, with the 3 being the E. So Tallahassee is to make his way to the car to just kind of check where they are, because now they have to be like severely suspicious about both these girls, because at any point in time they can pull like some kind of thing on them. So Tallahassee just thinks that they probably just like got further down the road, because like Tallahassee's like, I want to get these women, like I want to get after them. So Tallahassee's to make it back to the car and tell like Columbus, like, well, they must have just like left. So Little Rock is to appear from the back seat and just be like, yeah, like, we got you guys not only once, but twice. So Wichita is to make her way to the Hummer and just be like, yeah, guy, like, you guys just 2 for 2. So, but, like, instead of just separating, they all just decide to just go into the one car because they're just going to keep bumping into one another. It's just going to continue to happen. So anyways, so Little Rock and Tallahassee are to be in the back seats. Columbus and Wichita are to be in the front seats. So that leads us to go on to now showcase to us that they start going into... Oh, we have the one joke where Tallahassee used to make about, don't kill me with my own gun! But that transitions us on into the backstory of both Wichita and Little Rock, how we have to go into the engagement ring con, where Wichita and Little Rock are to go to this gas and gulp, and Wichita is to is to go and try to look for this engagement ring in this gas station. And so this gas station attendant is like, oh, hey, like, if anything, the ring is really expensive. And so this girl is to mention, it's like, well, hey, I'm on a flight, but if you can mail this ring to me, that would be great. And so this guy goes with that whole thing. And so all of a sudden we have Little Rock who ends up finding this ring. And so the gas station attendant is like, oh my God, like, you found that ring that I was looking for. And so Little Rock is just like, well, like, but what's it going to cost me kind of thing. Like, she wants money out of this. And so this guy clears out his whole entire, like, register for this girl. And so, like, they end up, Little Rock meets up with Wichita back in their car together. And so Little Rock is just like, yeah, like, man, I can't wait to actually get a engagement ring like this, because the actual engagement ring is like a fake, so it's not really a real ring. So that pushes us on to them back in this car. And so Tallahassee is to grab the gun from Little Rock, and like, we just have forcibly now Columbus now wanting to just like, you know what, like, with all the like craziness that goes on in this world, how about we just stop for 1 minute and play I Spy? Wouldn't that be great? So everybody's like, okay, sure. So really they are to ask the girls where the heck that they are really just heading to. And so Little Rock is to mention Pacific Playland. And we have Tallahassee that it's like, wow, that totally blows my mind. Like, how much fun you can have at Pacific Playland. Because Wichita is looking at Tallahassee, and so Tallahassee now has to like say like something nice to Little Rock. But eventually that's going to have to like turn around, and like she's gonna have to like pay it forward also. So because Columbus is to talk about like Ohio, and so Wichita is like, well, hey, like, do you know that in Ohio they're playing the quiet game because it's a dead town there? Everyone's freaking dead. And so like Tallahassee is looking at Wichita and is like, excuse me. And then so Wichita is like, oh, you must be from like Ohio. Well, maybe there's somebody left there. Maybe there's someone alive. But like, we have Columbus is like, yeah, probably everyone's dead there. Like, it's probably a waste of time for me to even try to go back home, because probably everyone will be dead. So anyways, we push on to a very long road trip, and eventually that leads to both Wichita and Columbus talking about growing up in Zombieland, where like Columbus is just saying, well, yeah, I'm sure it's really hard to grow up in Zombieland, and Wichita is just saying, well, no, it's just tough to grow up. So they are to see a car for Columbus to take, but Columbus instead decides that he's going to go and reseat his seatbelt back up and just go with them to where they are to go. And so Tallahassee is now just kind of, he has like cabin fever inside this car, and so he's like, we need to go somewhere. We need to just like, we need to go and like just, I need to stretch my legs. I have to probably also, speaking of which, I have to see how much battery this has. So let me pause here for a second. Okay, good. I apologize for how frequently I've paused through here, but like, I want to make sure that I have enough to talk through here. And plus there's also other just reasons why I had to pause. So all of a sudden we are to drive through here, and so Tallahassee is to mention that like Quantum Your Wampum, like, okay, that seems like a interesting spot. I was like, oh wow, like there's kind of like a Native American kind of place called Kimosabi. I almost said that wrong. I did. Like, I was like, what was this store called? Kimosabi. But yeah, I actually like. I thought that that was cool because it feels kind of different than the normal place that you would usually see a place stop at. So it was kind of just fun to see that. So really, we have everyone just kind of in the front of this spot, and so we have Tallahassee who's asking like, anybody want to go in first? And Columbus is like, no, because Rule 17 is don't be a hero. So even though he wanted to impress Wichita, he's like, no, nope. So of course Tallahassee's to make his way just like, yeah, hey, let's go and like kill another zombie because the zombie is to run out. All of a sudden, just smack into I think this like doorbell and fall over, and so like Tallahassee's to take this thing down and just ask like, killer of the week, zombie killer of the week, and it's like, nope, that ends up going to a woman that ends up going and tossing an entire piano on some guy. So all of a sudden we transition to both Columbus and Tallahassee being by this like perfume or cologne spot. And so Tallahassee is giving Columbus crap about putting on perfume, and he's like, it's cologne. It's like, perfume. So so Tallahassee's like, why are you putting on like perfume for? And so all of a sudden Columbus is looking at Wichita, and Tallahassee's like, yeah, like they've been effing us like throughout this whole entire road trip, so it's time to get even. So like, and so that just leads to have Columbus going and spraying some cologne on Tallahassee, and so Tallahassee's like, really? So Columbus is like, let me start my 3-part apology. And so Tallahassee's like, well, you know what? I have beaten Full Sail, but because of that. But you know what? I'll give you 45% power. So, poo! Anyways, so one thing lead to another. Columbus all of a sudden accidentally goes and knocks something over. So Tallahassee's like, yeah, like, freaking everybody, just like start breaking things, like break everything. And so now you just see this huge montage of everybody just going through everything and just smashing through everything. And you just see like these whole entire sections of stuff being toppled over, and you just really see them having a lot of fun. They're just like going crazily through this place and just destroying all of this stuff, which is just kind of cool. So they all get back into the car, and so we just have this kind of consistent pattern of like people like changing like seats in the car, but like they are to start like talking about certain topics. Like Tallahassee is talking to Little Rock, and Little Rock has mentioned that like, yeah, I don't know who Willie Nelson is. And Tallahassee's like, you don't know who Willie Nelson is? Really? Like, you know what? I've never hit a girl. No, that doesn't happen until later. So, both Wichita and Columbus, I think, are talking about seatbelts and how, like, Columbus is mentioning that, like, why aren't you wearing a seatbelt? And Wichita is like, well, with everything of, like, zombie, like, we can die at any moment. Like, I don't think a seatbelt is going to be my huge, like, it's my huge thing right now. And so Columbus is like, well, how about I just go without a seatbelt for a little bit? And he's like, you know what? It is a little freeing. So cue us going back with Tallahassee and Little Rock talking about Hannah Montana, where like Little Rock has to like describe Tallahassee Hannah Montana. Okay, sure. I guess to appeal to a wide audience. I don't know. I guess for a lot of guys that are just like, yeah, I have a little kid in Hannah Montana. I guess that was a popular thing at some point, but eventually Miley Cyrus grew out of that. So luckily for everyone. So or for most people. So we pull into this, I guess, Beverly Hills like town, And so Columbus is talking about how like something about sleep deprivation and how like it could be like the number one cause of like all problems in this world. And like Wichita is mentioning that it's like no, I don't. I think it's probably number two, as a like ha 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 crap, ha 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 hilarious, ha 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 whatever. So that transitions us to have them say it's like, well, if we're gonna live in style, we're gonna live in like the best style that we can possibly have. We're gonna go and find some big huge celebrity home and live there. So both Columbus and Wichita are scrambling to go to like God, what is that place? Uh like the one place where we have like a bunch of like I want to be really sensitive here, but like we have a bunch of people that end up like uh that usually wear like a ton of different costumes and they just kind of like sit out there and they're the costume person and whatever, and you get a lot of different kind of celebrities that have their like hands and footprints like by that spot, but I don't remember exactly what it's called. But they end up getting the maps of the stars there, and but it's gonna bug me what that name of it is. Like I know it's kind of like the God, I don't remember. But moving on, so transitioning us to have them try and figure out what star is it that they're going to go to the home of, and so once they get to the home, all of a sudden they're to see this big BM, which means any number of things, but so they head in this home, and so it ain't Bob Marley, and so it's to be the tippity top of the A list. And so once they head into the home, they're like the Mansion de Murray. And so that, of course, says to Little Rock, like, well, who's Bill Murray? Because all of a sudden everybody's like saying, oh my God, this is Bill Murray's home. Oh my God, like tickle my funny bone and ha ha ha. I love all of his movies. It's great. So, of course, the one big thing in Tallahassee's search is like, well, does Bill Murray's mansion have Twinkies? So they go through the entire home, and of course, there is not one lick of a Twinkie. So Wichita is mentioning that they should have gone to Russell Crowe's home, and so both Columbus and Little Rock are going into Bill Murray's theater room. So this is where Columbus is going to teach Little Rock who Bill Murray is by having them going and watching Ghostbusters, which I'm like, yeah, this is a great part of this movie. And like once we get this kind of bottled in scene, like the very first time I ever watched this movie, I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. And I think there was one time where I did like ask somebody about this movie because I never saw it. And they're like, well, you're probably going to like one spot, like especially if you like Ghostbusters, because immediately that's what they asked me. And I was like, yeah, I like Ghostbusters. And they're like, oh, you're really going to like this movie then. I'm like, okay. Like, and that was such a long time ago. So because I just like never got to this movie. Like I just decided like, nah, I think I just bought it later on because like I kept hearing some stuff about this movie, and so I just kind of bought it because it was like I found it for really cheap, like dirt cheap. And so I just bought the movie, and then I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. And they're like, yeah, it's a great film. Like, yeah, of course it is. Uh, so that pushes us on to have Columbus and Little Rock going into Bill Murray's theater room, and Columbus is asking Little Rock, it's like, well, hey, what type of guy does your sister usually like? And Little Rock is like, well, bad boys, and so Columbus just like dumps the popcorn on the ground. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, did you want more of that? Like, just be like a stupid little like thing. So, uh, So all of a sudden, like both Wichita and Tallahassee are just kind of hearing the Ghostbusters theme in the background, and so like Tallahassee is like dancing to the song and whatever, and like Tallahassee's also wanting to desperately get his boots off, which Wichita doesn't help him get his boots off. They go through the home, and eventually, Wichita has to make dibs on some bed, and Tallahassee's like, "Well, I didn't want to sleep in this room anyways. Bed's too soft." So that all of a sudden is to have a zombie all of a sudden awaken from being in a bed, and to make its way down to find both Wichita and Tallahassee. So all of a sudden we are to see Bill Murray zombie, and so all of a sudden Bill Murray is a zombie. You're like, "Arr!" And so Wichita is to all of a sudden freaking golf club Bill Murray, and then he's like, "Ow!" So they're to be like, "Wait a minute, you're really Bill Murray?" And Bill Murray is like, "Let's go with Bill," because he said to go with Bill. Bill is like, "Yeah, like if anything, I just like there was some special effects guy that told me how to like look like this, so like I decided to like go and like do a little licorice for the ladies and like all this like whatever." Like evidently his hair is like a hairpiece, and so now we have like Tallahassee's like, "Oh my god, I loved all your movies," and like all this. And like here's the thing, they don't bring up like Kingpin. Like they don't bring up Kingpin, the one like Woody Harrelson like Bill Murray movie. Like it would have been great as just like a jab to just bring up that movie that both of them had been together like doing. Like that would have been funny, but they didn't bring that up. And I was like, what a waste. They could have bring up Kingpin. Freaking, that would have been fun. I know it's a bowling movie, and I know that movie isn't like maybe not like the top of like Bill Murray's list of hits, but still like. But anyways, so Tallahassee is just mentioning like that he loved every single thing of Bill Murray's, and Bill is just saying like thank you, like so like in like it's a really cool moment. So all of a sudden, like Bill is like, "Well, hey, like what should we do next?" Like so all of a sudden they just decide to like smoke weed. Like immediately, since there's no rules, they could just go and smoke weed. And then right after that they go and reenact the Ghostbusters Slimer scene, because I guess Bill Murray's home is to have like a chandelier. So Wichita is bizarrely playing the Janine role, which like she had to play something. So uh, we have Tallahassee who's playing the Peter Venkman role, and Bill Murray is playing the Ray Stantz role. And so they're like recreating the whole like cross the stream Slimer moment. And I just thought, I was like, man, this is so cool, because they actually have like the movie props and like the Ghostbuster costume, which I thought was funny. And then like Bill Murray's just like, he has this like vacuum, and I thought that was really fun. Like I thought that was kind of cool. Like how like Bill was not playing Bill, he was playing Ray. That was kind of funny. Uh so now like Bill Murray is making his way to just go like, okay, well, I'm gonna go and now like surprise both like Columbus and Little Rock. And so Columbus will actually know who this guy is, but Little Rock, of course, won't. So Bill is to make his way down to be like, ah, and so of course with Columbus always being shoot first, ask questions never, Columbus is to all of a sudden grab his gun and shoot Bill Murray in the chest. And so all of a sudden Bill Murray plops into this chair, and he's like, "Is that where you meet people? Is that how you meet people where you come from?" So we have like Columbus is like, "Oh my god, I didn't know." So Tallahassee and Wichita are like going to like Bill Murray's side, and they're like, "Do you think you're gonna pull through, Bill?" And so Murray turns right to Columbus and he's like, "No." Like, just that like selling factor of that whole thing. Uh, so, so they ask him like, "Hey, Murray, do you have any regrets? Do you have any regrets, Bill?" He's like, "Well, maybe Garfield." Because, like, I'm sure, like, there's one movie that every actor hates that they did, or every director hates that they did. Like, there always has to be that moment of, like, well, it paid well, but, like, if anything, it almost destroyed my career. Like, supposedly, I think for, like, Ryan Reynolds, I think maybe, like, he might see, like, Green Lantern might have been a thing that, like, almost destroyed his career, but man, is he doing a lot of other things which were really great afterwards. Regardless of like, I love the movie Buried. If you've never seen the movie Buried, check that out. I know it's a movie like entirely in darkness, but man, is that a great film. But moving on. So all of a sudden we have Murray who is to all of a sudden like die, but he's taking a forever time to do it. Sadly enough, because he's like, like it's like this last death rattle that is taking like 20 minutes of our lives, and then like Wichita is like, oh my god, he's just so funny. So they are to take Murray's body and to take it to this side of this home and just like toss it over to do, and they do this gun salute, and then they toss the body over. I'm like, man, like every single time I would see like a movie where someone was to get killed, like there was this one movie that I just saw like recently where like someone was to die and it was on this boat, and so they just kept like tossing them off to the side. Everyone who was to die, they just toss off to the side of this boat. I'm like, why not just keep the body somewhere? Like every single time I just see a movie where they're just grabbing this body and just tossing them out, like as if like it's like, man, that's so awful, just tossing a dead body. So, but I guess it could probably smell or whatever, but still. So going back, so we have like the gang all playing, I think, Monopoly or something, and so. And this is like one of those like high end Monopoly boards where I think they probably have like real rubies for dice and real money and stuff like that. I've seen like a really expensive variation of Monopoly, and you could just be amazed about how like expensive that actually is. So all of a sudden we have again Tallahassee going and talking about Buck yet again. And so Columbus is saying like, "Oh yeah, that was his puppy." And so Columbus is going into this story yet again about Buck like having his laugh and like having his appetite and having all this stuff. And so Columbus is like, wait a minute, like laugh, like so that's his son? Like he had a son? Like doesn't seem like he had a wife. So so uh Tallahassee is like going and talking about how both him and Buck made a wallet out of duct tape, and so Tallahassee starts to cry and he's like, I haven't cried like that since Titanic. Like, I think if anything, I used that joke for like the longest time, like because I loved that whole like thing. I haven't cried like that since Titanic. Like I used that and I milked the crap out of that line for the longest time. So we transitioned to have both Tallahassee and Little Rock going and doing like target practice with these like these wine glasses or these plates. And so Wichita and Columbus are going and they are like sharing a bottle of wine that was to be 1997. So they're trying to remember what happened in their 1997, and man, are they freaking specific about it. Because I'm just like, how do they know what exactly happened in 1997? But so Wichita is to mention that she was to go to a theater to see Anaconda, and that movie, I guess, was awful to her. and she was to get her first tattoo. I don't remember what, like there was some animal that she was to get. I don't remember what it was called. And then she was to have her first kiss with Scotty Lynch. I guess that's the only thing that she could remember about all the 1997. And so Columbus is to mention, like, man, I wish I would have had your 1997, because he went to some orthodontist or whatever, some dentist who was to get him headgear. He got his first brie at wood shop. Boo hoo for you. Man, I wish I could have had a bee and everything. And then he went to some Sadie Hawkins dance, but like he didn't actually dance because like it was girls' choice, and so like he just went there and just like stood in the back, probably, I guess. I don't know. Like, so that's when like Wichita and Columbus are to just dance, because like, no, like we're gonna dance because if anything, like you're gonna get that dance, and so they start dancing, and so it seems like they're gonna have this like great moment, and also like Wichita is mentioning like, hey, Scotty Lynch is just in the past. He's probably dead. I hope he's a zombie. I hope he is. So Tallahassee is to bump in to just say, hey, like, can you help us move a couch because we're making a fort? And so Columbus is like, I'm gonna murder you. Like, dude, can't you just see me? Like I could have copped a feel, you motherfucker. So so Emma and Little Rock the very next day are to leave because Wichita was to mention to Columbus that if anything, like they shouldn't like be getting close to one another because eventually they could both die at any moment. So Tallahassee or Columbus is telling Tallahassee that it's like, dude, you're a freaking like a cock block. You're like they made you in some kind of factory, a machine, whatever. So I'm trying to finish it up because I realize how late this review is, and it's like an hour and a half movie. So let's get to it. Uh, so both Little Rock and Wichita are making it to Pacific Playland. Wichita has to mention, it's like, well, hey, like now that you survived the zombie apocalypse, like what do you want to do now? Go to Pacific Playland. So they make it into Pacific Playland. They start everything up. And so eventually that leads to eventually the zombies hearing the noise, and so they go to Pacific Playland. So, uh, so Columbus and Tallahassee are talking, and Tallahassee's kind of tempted to go to Mexico because bizarrely they have some kind of other weird name for Twinkies in Mexico. No offense to Mexico people, whatever floats your boat. So, anyways, so again, we transition to Columbus mentioning it's like, well, I'm going to go with Wichita and Little Rock to Pacific Playland. And so Tallahassee's like, you know what? Like, I just don't think, like, have you ever read the book that she's not that into you? Like, you got to make yourself less available, you know? Like, so, but eventually that leads us to having to eventually go with the at the playland where all of a sudden it's like, well, hey, zombies are here. We have to start like shooting our way out, and so both Tallahassee and Columbus are having this like kind of like uh, final goodbye like moment where Tallahassee's going to go his way and Columbus is going to go to Pacific Playland. And so Tallahassee's like, well, that'll do, pig. That'll do. And so like Columbus is like, God, like you didn't even do that well. Like you didn't even say goodbye well. You stole that from some line. So Jesse needs to get on his motorcycle, and so and he is to fall off his motorcycle. And so Tallahassee's saying like, okay, Evel Knievel, come with me. We'll go to Pacific Playland. So both both Wichita and Little Rock are in this like tower ride, and so that leads to eventually having both uh, Columbus and Tallahassee make their way to the playland, and they spot both the girls, and so it's like, well, I guess we should apologize to them, and so Tallahassee is to kind of gun up, and so uh, Tallahassee is to go on this swing ride and just kind of start shooting people, and Columbus is to go through this haunted house, and we're just to kind of see how that plays out. Tallahassee is to eventually make his way also to a roller coaster and start killing zombies off that way. Eventually, the girls are to run out of bullets, and they are to shoot the mechanism that is to like stop this ride from going up and down. So Tallahassee is to go in this like Pacific Playland Treasures like little like spot, and he is to put all these like these God, what is it called? Little blockers for anyone to come in to try to like get at him. And so he kind of shoots through these little blockers, these little fence like things, to kill all these zombies. Like he puts all the bullets down one by one. So pushing on as much as humanly possible. So Columbus is to make his way to the two girls, and all of a sudden he is to see a zombie clown. So he's like, well, this is going to be the one time that I'm going to break this Rule 17, I think, and be a hero. So Jesse Eisenberg's character is to eventually go and take this sledgehammer that he finds and smashes the clown with this, and that kills that off. Jesse is to eventually go and free the girls, and so that eventually leads to Wichita mentioning to Columbus that she's Krista, and so they both kiss, and so that leads Wichita to mention it's like, hey, like he made it to first base, and so they go on this adventure again to go and find a Twinkie, and so they eventually find out that there might be a spot with that, so they go and find this spot, and all of a sudden, Columbus is to shoot through this door because he thinks there's a zombie. Wichita is to find that that is the one spot where there was a box of Twinkies there, and so both Tallahassee and Columbus are to think that both the girls are leaving them, and so instead they stop and they toss a Twinkie to Tallahassee, and so the guys are deciding to go and get into the car, and the girls try to like prank them to like, ha ha ha, like we're gonna like not get it to where you guys are gonna get in here. So all the people get into the car, and so if anything, it's all about enjoying the little things, and so they pull off, and that ends this movie. So I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.